Welcome to the Audio Inc. Radio podcast, featuring interviews with the biggest names in rock and metal. Hosted by Anne Erickson.
Get inked. Visit Facebook.com/Audio Inc. Radio, Twitter.com/Audio Inc. Radio, and AudioIncRadio.com for more ink. Whew, that's a lot of ink. It's AudioIncRadio.com.
Can you believe that we made it? We made it to a new year, which it was kind of touch and go there for a while. What a crazy year last year was. But you know what? Now it's all in the past. It is officially last year, and this is officially this year. And this is the first show of the year. I am so excited to rock it with you all year right here on the Audio Inc. Radio podcast. It's Anne Erickson, and I've had so much fun rocking it with you with all these amazing interviews. If you missed some of the interviews from last year, make sure to head to wherever you rock out to the podcast and just kind of scroll through all the stuff that you missed, because we have some really great stuff up there. But we are turning the page on what was a wild and unpredicted year last year. And I just have a feeling deep down that's going to be an amazing year. We are going to rock it. You and I, we're going to have a great year. The world, everyone is going to have a great year. I'm going to make it happen. I am praying that we get live music again, because I really miss live music in just such a huge way. And just hopefully everything will come back slowly but surely. That is the goal. I would rather have it come back slowly but come back than just not at all. So in any case, this is now the first official interview of the year. And of course, it's a great one. We've got Andy from Black Veil Brides. They've got a new track out called Scarlet Cross, which is really cool, because one thing I love about Black Veil Brides is they're one of those younger bands that puts out heavy music. Whenever people say rock is dead, people don't make rock music anymore, or newer bands or whatnot, I just say that's not true. And Black Veil Brides is one of those bands that just proves that rock is far from dead. I mean, they embrace those heavy guitars and just the bigness of rock music. And they've been around about 10 years, but they've got a young audience, blah, blah, blah. So they just totally rock, and I love that they totally rock it out. They've also got a new record on the way this year called The Phantom Tomorrow. No release date yet, but we'll keep you posted. And it was very cool to talk with Andy about the new single and The Phantom Tomorrow, which is on the way, and it's going to be another concept record for the guys of Black Veil Brides. I'll get into that in just a few, but first, if you are listening and for whatever reason you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, not sure why that would be. I will try not to hold it against you, but hey, I would like you to change that right now. Just make sure to subscribe. Wherever you listen to podcasts, just search Anne Erickson or search Audio Inc. Radio, wherever you rock out. Hit subscribe. And if you listen to the podcast or to podcasts on a bunch of different platforms, it really helps if you actually subscribe on all of the different platforms that you rock out on. So go ahead and do that. And if you're rocking out on Apple Podcast, please leave a 5-star review. That really helps the show and it makes me happy. So kind of a bonus thing that it makes me happy when I get a new positive comment on the show via Apple Podcasts. So you can just head there, hit that 5-star review. I really appreciate all of the great support. And my band Upon Wings, we've got new stuff on the way very, very soon. We were going to release it late last year, and then with holidays and all that stuff, it just seemed like a better idea to wait. So we did. We waited, and we've waited a long time, I admit, when it comes to new heavy music. But the new stuff is going to be among the heaviest that we've done. I mean, it won't be screaming or anything like that, but it's going to be some of the heaviest music that we've done. And I would love for you to check it out. So make sure that you follow Upon Wings on all social platforms. Just head to uponwings.com And you can find out where to link up on social media and all that great stuff. And finally, if you want to link up with me on my personal socials, I would love to hear from you if you have an idea for the show, something different that we can do because, hey, it's a new year. Why not be a little different? I thought so. Why not? So if you have an idea to kind of switch it up on the show, don't be shy. I promise I don't bite. Hit me up on social media. The easiest way is just head to itsmeanne.com. That's itsmeanne.com. itsmeanne.com. And you'll find links to link up on my Facebook and all of that stuff because my Facebook is kind of complicated, but itsmeanne.com. And then if you want to link up direct on my Twitter and Snapchat at Anne Erickson, Instagram and TikTok at Erickson Anne. That's where you can pretty much find me. And one of my New Year's resolutions, which I don't usually do a New Year's resolution, honestly, because last year I know I made one and I don't even remember what it was, but I thought, why not? It's 2021. We had a crazy year last year. Why not make a few New Year's resolutions? And one of them is that I've actually been posting on itsmeanne.com some of my favorite recipes because I like to bake. It's just something I've always enjoyed, and I got back into it a little bit over the holidays. So I got some recipes up there, and if that's not your thing, I'm also going to be starting to do personal blogging about music and about stuff like that. So I'm going to kind of add more to itsmeanne.com so you can check that out. And of course, there's also the Audio Inc. radio publication, which is audioinkradio.com. That's INK, like Tattoo Inc. audioinkradio.com, which is a news outlet. So it's a music news outlet. You'll find news stories, interviews, stuff like that at audioinkradio.com. But enough about all my stuff. Let's get into it. A great chat with Andy from Black Veil Brides.
Hey, it's Andy Black from Black Veil Brides, and you're listening to Audio Inc. Radio with Anne Erickson.
Hey, Andy. How are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks. And thanks for making the time to chat.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me.
First of all, how are you doing? During this, everything is just upside down.
I'm doing really well. I mean, it's a bizarre situation. I think there's no way around it. It's been difficult for everybody. It's affected everyone on a personal level, whether it's from a emotional level or a financial level or, in some cases, medical level. Jinx, my guitar player, was diagnosed with COVID about 2 weeks ago. And he's thankfully on the mend, and he's back upright and, in his home studio working on parts and stuff for the record back again. The only issue for him right now is that, he and his wife just had a child, and he can't be around his baby, and so it's just difficult. It's no matter how hard you try to be safe, there's always something that could happen. And again, from the perspective that, as a musician, realistically in 2020 and this era, our job and the thing that quote unquote, pays our bills is to go on tour, and to not be able to do that is difficult, and obviously financially difficult. It's also just difficult to not be able to go on the road and play your music and connect with people. And so all around, it's just been a year of learning how to kind of pivot and find a new way to do things. And for us, that's been all about recording and writing.
Right. Well, and it's great that you have the new record on the way, and the new Scarlet Cross, which I love the heavy riffing and just big sound on here. So is that sound indicative of the record that's ahead? Yeah.
And, I think that for us, there's kind of this thing where a lot of bands or our contemporaries have kind of strayed from the guitar-oriented big chorus rock, and that to me is that's what we love. That's the music that we make, and if people grow apathetic to that type of music, that's their prerogative. But for us, that's what we love to make. That's why we got into making music in the first place. But the discovery for me of Kiss when I was a kid, or for different reasons, through Springsteen or Meatloaf or any of these artists, it was always the big ass chorus and the guitar solo and the fun and the sing-along nature of it. And then from an emotional perspective, being able to write about concepts that resonate. So I would certainly say that the song is indicative of the album, but it's also it's a record that has different flavors and styles and ideas and concepts on there. And so the next song that you hear from this record, in my opinion, won't sound like Scarlet Cross necessarily, but to us, the goal is always to have it sound like it's by the same band, and that, it's not by a stable of writers writing for a specific genre so that somebody can have 30 different types of music on a given record. I like the idea of musical evolution, and I like the idea of trying different things, but I also, just as a rock and roll fan, I like the idea of a band being a band and having their sound.
Definitely. And you mentioned some bands getting away from the guitar-driven stuff, and I think for a while there was the thought that young people don't want to hear guitars, that it wasn't cool. But do you feel that's changed? Because you guys are a very young band with, young fans, and it's great to see you guys going towards the guitar stuff.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge misconception with people about how much rock there actually is in the world. You hear oftentimes people who are in an older generation say that there's no bands anymore that are trying, or there's no guitar anymore, or all this kind of really misguided stuff. And I always compare it to, I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, and I only really watch Bengals games anymore because I just don't really have time to sit down and watch all the games in the NFL. But if I only watched Bengals games and then made the blanketed statement that all NFL teams must lose and that no NFL teams ever win because I only watch the Bengals, you would call me a fool. You'd say, watch some other games, get out there, see some other stuff, other teams win. But people, there's a certain generation of people who don't acknowledge the fact that there is fun and art and pageantry and excitement and rock and roll in the world. They're just not looking for it. They think because their bands are no longer making records, no bands are. And so I think it's a little bit of a misconception that there isn't guitar bands out there. And I think that us being able to be 10 years into our career and continuing success and having people still give a shit about what we do is a testament to that. And by the way, we're not alone in that. It's just that we've been a band that's been able to find success through it.
Oh, that's great. And, fans are definitely looking forward to the Phantom tomorrow. And I've heard the record described as a concept album. So have you always wanted to do a concept thing, or did it just kind of happen?
Well, we've done a number of them over the years, and I think that this probably is the most fully realized concept. I would say that our first major label record in 2011, I had wanted it to be a concept record, but my underdeveloped 19-year-old brain at the time or whatever I wasn't able to fully realize that. And a couple years later, we did a record called Wretched and Divine, which was our first real full stab at figuring out how to build a story. And I think that we were successful in doing that, but I think we've learned a lot of lessons through the way and how to really build out a record that not only has a story, but also is at its base level a rock and roll record that is an enjoyable listen, whether you're listening for the story or you're listening for the album. And I think that's a really delicate balance that you have to find. I've mentioned before that I was a huge Kiss fan growing up, still am, and they have the record Music from the Elder, which in many ways is a very difficult thing to listen to, because in my opinion they were not able to marry the music and the story in a way that would be enjoyable for even a casual listener. And so I think what we've got at this point is we've done everything we can over the last number of years to figure out how to make a kick-ass rock record that also has an ornate and kind of over-the-top story that runs throughout it.
Awesome. And you mentioned that Jinx is still working on the record, so it's not quite done yet?
I would say, here's the thing. We've just been enjoying doing this so much that what initially we kind of projected to be the end date, and when we thought we'd be done with the material, has kind of been pushed back a little bit, because we're really enjoying writing, and we think we're writing better and better stuff. So the reality is I think you're going to see stuff a little bit sooner than anticipated, and you're going to see more stuff through the long run.
And tell me how music videos are going to play into this, because, you guys released that awesome music video for Scarlet Cross, and I know that you have more on the way.
Well, the Scarlet Cross story right now is we see it over the course of 3 videos for that story that started in Scarlet Cross. And Scarlet Cross, the story is more so just setting up characters. It's obviously a cliffhanger. You're not really knowing what's happening. It's more so just showing what these characters look like, what the world looks like, all that kind of stuff. And so for us, we see it taking at least 2 more videos to kind of fully realize that story through the course of it.
And you mentioned Jinx, of course, coming down with COVID, but you said that thankfully he is on the other side of it, right?
Yeah, he's, you never know with this kind of stuff, and it's obviously day to day for him, but I last spoke to him just yesterday, and he said that, he's on the mend, that he's following all the doctor's instructions, that he's doing much better, and that he anticipates that he'll be able to be back in action, fully within the next 2 weeks or so.
That's awesome, because that's so scary. Everyone, reacts differently to it. So that's great to hear that he's on the up and up.
Yeah, I mean, for us, there's multiple fears that pop up in that moment because you go, okay, well, that's terrible. That's really scary for him. What are we going to do to help him? Then the second thought is, well, we were all just around him a few days ago. So then we've got to all go through rigorous testing and self-isolation. And so we're thankfully, no one in the band or anybody that we worked with, in the studio crew or anybody else, has exhibited any symptoms. And we've all had multiple negative tests over the course of the last 10 to 15 days. So, everybody has been fortunate in that regard. But it's just, it's a crazy situation.
Right. I mean, the whole thing is crazy. Based on what you're hearing inside the industry, do you have any idea when traditional concerts will be back?
I am hearing that there is some hope for the summer, but that it's most likely looking like the fall for any actual touring. But, that's a moving target. That changes all the time. I can remember, when this all first started and we had cancellations and postponements, that we were being told, well, we're going to postpone this until September. And obviously here we are, and that didn't happen. So, it's a moving target. And I think that not only does the industry have to move with that, but so does, obviously the medical regulations and the concepts that are put out there for how to protect yourself. That changes every day as well. So, it's hard. It's a year where for us, we've really had to just accept the fact that it was not going to be a financially viable year. But we're doing all we can. We at the end of the day, it's been a time to really focus on the art of it and to make music because we love making music. And, you do what you can to get by in the interim.
Right. At this point, I'll be happy if they're back by next fall. I remember there was a time when I thought, oh, that's so far away. But now I'm thinking after everything going on, it's like next fall. That sounds soon.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, at this point, it's starting to feel like normal conversations for me because I don't think a lot of people necessarily understand that tours are planned, generally speaking, a year in advance.
Yeah.
So, I always give the example of like Warped Tour. People would always ask when Warped Tour was happening, well, can you get this band on and that band? And the reality was that for the following summer, offers for Warped Tour would go out that right after, basically when it was over, that like October after it ended in August is when Warped Tour qualifying offers would go out for the following year. So, I mean, you're always looking at it from basically a year in the future when it comes to tour planning. And so for me to be having conversations now with management about when things like the In This Moment tour that we're meant to go on together is going to happen, all that stuff, that feels more real now than it did, say, a couple months ago because it was just such an unknown. But I will say this, I think that, and I don't have any inside information other than what I know personally for what we're doing, but I think people should prepare for a lot more live stream or performances that are being streamed kind of oriented things for the time being because that seems more realistic on a large scale.
Right. Yeah, I think so as well. And I mean, that's something that I think we'll see a lot of, the next 6 months, 9 months until we finally get concerts back.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to be the way that it's trending right now. But, that's also grown. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you look at, from an industry perspective, how different it is now to where it was. I mean, Kiss just announced that they're doing a full-scale production.
Yeah, the New Year's Eve, yeah.
Like that's the kind of stuff that maybe 6-8 months ago you wouldn't have imagined, and now it seems like that's going to be popping up more and more. I know that we're working on something right now that's pretty special that we're going to end up doing. So, just it's all about finding ways to continue playing music and entertaining people, because at the end of the day, that's our job. Above everything else, our job is to make arts and music and fun and take people away from the kind of the drudgery of life and the things that they deal with. And right now, I think people need that escapism probably more than ever.
It's true. It really is true. And you mentioned Kiss a lot, being a fan of Kiss. Were you a fan of Van Halen? And what are your thoughts on losing the great Eddie Van Halen?
It's one of those things where it's actually kind of funny. I wasn't a Van Halen fan as a kid, and not for lack of trying. My dad, who introduced me to Kiss and all the other bands that I ended up listening to, was always trying to get me to like Van Halen, but there was just something about DLR that just didn't connect with me. And as an adult, I kind of found it later and grew to really love and appreciate, what they are as a band and how important they were. So obviously, there's a lot of things that play into Kiss where Eddie played on Christine 16 and a number of other songs. Obviously the band was originally discovered by Gene Simmons, and he tried to sign them, and they were basically turned away by the original management company, saying that this band wasn't going to succeed. And I've also resonated heavily personally with kind of their story, in the sense that, not to take it away from Eddie too much, but when it comes to David Lee Roth, he's someone that when he first started, people said he couldn't sing, and he had a very different kind of voice, and they said he wasn't going anywhere. And when we first started, that was the same sort of critiques that we were getting, was that we had amazing guitar players, but the singer can't sing. That was one of the things that we heard all the time. So I can really relate to their story in that way. And to lose, I'm in my living room right now, and Juliet and I have these pictures all around our living room of, the cream of the crop rock stars, and we've got all these framed photos of their mugshots. We always just thought it was interesting because, to get to see kind of these stars that we grew up with, and see that they also did things that were crazy. And, because sometimes anybody, you feel like, man, did I make the right decision? Or maybe that song was terrible, and is this going to ruin everything? And we kind of like the idea. We have all these art pieces in our living room of Bowie and Mick Jagger and, Jimi Hendrix and all the kind of main stars. And as I look around this room, so many of them have now passed. And it's truly a bizarre feeling to think of these incredible kind of mammoths of like rock and when I always say when rock stars roamed the earth, all these pillars of the culture that I grew up in and idolizing. The fact that so many of them are gone is just heartbreaking, and I don't think you could ever possibly even speak to the level of importance that Eddie Van Halen had without even underselling it, because kind of singularly created the idea of a guitar hero and that style of guitar playing, and created a style that had never been heard, and then was immediately replicated or tried to be replicated by everybody under the sun after that. And that is extremely unique and extremely important, and it was a huge loss for the rock community, a huge loss for the world.
Yeah, and that's a great point. All of our rock heroes are just one by one, passing away, and it's just terrifying. Who's going to be left, Yeah,
I mean, it's also like who you idolize more and how they affected you will hit you at different levels. Like, I've always loved David Bowie, and I've always been heavily influenced by David Bowie, but my wife Juliet is the biggest David Bowie fan I know, and that day that he passed away, she was inconsolable, and for some time after that. And for me, it was very sad, but I'm not trying to underplay it or say that, I wasn't affected, because I certainly was, but I look at it like, if Gene and Paul passed away, I think that it would be a similar thing for me, because that is those are two people that have been almost like, they don't know this, but they've been like friends to me since I was 3 years old. I've heard their voices nearly every day in some capacity, and the influence was so massive. So it's just crazy to think of, as time goes on, losing some of these characters that have been such central characters to your life, and you don't even know them most.
Right. No, that's a great point. Perfect. Well, it's been great chatting. Is there anything else that you want to add?
That's it. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great holiday. Stay safe.
You too.
Andy from Black Veil Brides, thank you for being an amazing guest on my show. Just an awesome dude, and you can tell, very smart guy, just very cool to talk with, very down to earth, very intelligent guy. And yeah, it's crazy to think just all of the musicians that we've lost last year. I was going to say this year because I almost feel like it's still last year, but thankfully it is not. We're officially in a new year, and hopefully things will return. Hopefully things will be better, and hopefully live music will be back, because Black Veil Brides is one of those bands that's just really awesome to check out live in concert, and I cannot wait for them to be back there on the road, which hopefully, God willing, knock on wood, find some wood to knock on. I'm actually seeking out wood right now to knock on, because I don't just say it, I actually do it. But hopefully they'll be able to do that tour that he was talking about and stuff like that. So Andy, once again, thank you for being an awesome guest. Scarlet Cross, their new single is out right now, and The Phantom tomorrow is on the way. It's Anne Erickson, and wow, that was a fun first show of the year. The very first show of 2021. Great to rock with you as always. And just like last year, if you don't subscribe on the podcast yet, I want to ask you to please go ahead and do that. Just search Anne Erickson or search Audio Inc. Radio wherever you rock out to podcast. Hit subscribe, and it is that easy. Like that. You will instantly be subscribed, and then you'll get updates directly from me when a new show is up. Just like that. And you can also, if you're rocking out on Apple Podcast, please leave a 5-star review. I definitely appreciate all of that amazing support. Check out my band, Upon Wings, at uponwings.com. New stuff out very, very soon. And yeah, if you want to get in touch, if you want to talk with me about music, or if you have an idea for this show or an idea for a guest on the show, I would love to hear from you. Hit me up on social media. Just head to itsmeanne.com, itsmeanne.com, itsmeanne.com to link up on my personal social media like Facebook and stuff like that, Twitter and Snapchat at Anne Erickson, Instagram at Erickson Anne. So many different ways to get in touch and rock with me online. And you can see what I look like, which you probably know because you see the little picture on the podcast. But just in case, lots more great stuff on the way for this year, which I'm calling it's going to be a great year for everyone. I'm just going to say it's going to be a great year. And also some video interviews on the way very soon at youtube.com/Audio Inc. Radio. That's the Audio Inc. Radio YouTube channel. I've got some really cool, fun interviews on the way. And of course, tons of cool stuff for the podcast. So make sure to hang out with me all year long. Until next time, it's Anne Erickson. Be safe, God bless, and we'll rock soon.
It's Audio Inc. with Anne.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Audio Inc. Radio podcast. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. Get inked online at audioinkradio.com. I'm Anne Erickson for the Audio Inc. Radio podcast.